Good morning, Uganda. The date today is 24th of April 2023. We are coming closer to the end of the month, slowly but surely. Welcome back from the weekend. My name is Philomena Mastiko. An eventful weekend, I must say, of course, coupled by the weather that did not really have anybody guessing what it would look like. But also, it's been a very long weekend, I must say, all the way from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and now we are back to the grind. Well, like I did say, the weekend was quite eventful, but we cannot overlook the major, I could say, the major event that happened over there after we finally, or the country finally laid to rest the former minister, the former permanent secretary for the office of the Prime Minister, but who also once held a major position as being the head of the Treasury in the Ministry of Finance, that is the late Keith Muhakanezi. Quite moving speeches were said over there, and of course don't be surprised if we share some of the key things that we picked from some of these speeches. Well, when I say we, of course, the whole team is here to start off the week with you, Robert, Mollen and Felix. Robert, good morning.
Good morning. Well, like indeed you said, this is the Pearl of Africa, and every time it takes me back to the words of Winston Churchill, who arrived in Uganda and looked at the evergreen environment and said, well, this is the Pearl of Africa. But I think for me what took me over the weekend was the fact that our brothers and sisters that are stranded in Sudan will be returning home via Ethiopia. That is according to our ambassador there. They said, well, the 300, they have sent some number of buses to see them back home. That is forceful evacuation. But one question comes to my mind, team and our viewers, is it leaders who stay in power for some time that are the problems of this country, or something else? Gaddafi left Libya a long time ago. Saddam Hussein did the same. Sudan, we see Bashir, but none of these countries has had peace. So that is a question that is lingering in my mind. Sometimes when I hear people who talk about longevity in leadership as a problem to countries, but even when these leaders leave, peace is never restored permanently.
Well, it's a very sad. If I would answer, probably, Robert, I would say that the leaders that stay in power could be part of the problem. I believe there are very many other supporting factors or supporting issues as to why we have endless problems, but definitely could be or could not be part of the reasons as to why. Well, Mollen, welcome back from the long weekend. Good morning.
Yes, a very good morning to you, Philomena, and obviously we also have to wish a good morning to our family out there. The weekend is usually quite a long one, but then when Monday comes in, it seems like you haven't had it at all. So yes, back to Monday. No Monday blues like Felix usually puts it across, but I think this Monday feels a little bit different.
It does.
For me. Yeah, I feel the difference. For me, yes, I'll speak for myself. It looks like there is light at the end of the tunnel, and someone was wondering why did they have to put light at the end of the tunnel? Why not at the beginning? You have
so
to
you
go
see where you're headed. Yes.
Exactly. So you have to go through all this just to see the light. But yes, it is. Now, sadly, as following up on the story about the cult issue in Kenya, and very sad story right there. But also it did pose a huge challenge that I wish to put to all Ugandans and everyone else out there. How much faith are we putting in these men that call themselves pastors, to the extent that people now have the belief to be aware of what they are doing? They are fasting till death just because someone came and told them, when you die you're going to see Jesus. It beats my understanding, Philomena. You look at the fact that these are elites. I've been reading about some lady, an air hostess,
yes,
who allowed her son, a toddler, to be part of such a cult, and then the kid starved himself to death. As if that was not enough, she also moved in the same thing. So I'm thinking maybe there needs to be a revision on how we can actually stop some of these individuals from doing such acts. Because you look at the fact that these are human beings, and of course we do not have the same understanding. There are people who will be misled and they will think it's okay. When a pastor comes in, or these people calling themselves men of God, when a man of God comes and says this is what you're supposed to do,
yes,
there are people who will not be able to understand the extent of that, and they will do it. Now the question is, who comes in to intervene? How do we save people from being a part of such a deadly scenario?
You know, Mollen, when His Excellency talked about us Ugandans and anybody that has, I mean, for now, he actually talked about Ugandans having to change their mindset and even going ahead to, you know, apportion a certain fraction of the budget for that specific role. I think this was not only meant for Ugandans, it was just meant for humankind. There is need to have a change in mindset, because when it comes to cults, you can't understand how they operate, because you will be shocked by the people. We've also had our fair share here.
I think you remember the Chibwetere issue. People in Western Uganda, there are a lot of things that have happened even here inUganda. You still see people following
the people you really
individuals.
expect not to be part of it, the elites, those take off the #1 position. So clearly, like I said, it's a mindset thing. It's not education, it's not exposure, it's just the mindset. How are we going to do that? Well, that is a responsibility I leave upon ourselves. Well, I saw Felix over there smiling in total agreement. Felix, good morning. Welcome back from the weekend.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good.
How was your weekend?
It was lovely.
Any one of you went to church this weekend?
I did not.
Just doing a roll call. Someone is sipping on their tea. Mollen, did you go to church?
Why would you say that? You know, God is watching and God is everywhere.
Bob, did you pass by church? I'll excuse Mollen. And, did you pass by church? Yeah. Okay.
You
so
made us
clearly I was the only one who managed to go to church this weekend. And
I did my service via TV, so I didn't go to church, but via TV.
You know, I'll tell you the reason why congregation is key. For it's biblical, and it's a calling that where 2 or 3 shall gather in the focus of worship of my name, I shall be in there. And that says the Spirit of God. So I think, but I prayed for you. I had a good time at the Namugongo Shrine. Quite beautiful messages there throughout the weekend. And just relating religion to something that you guys have been talking about, that Mollen did bring up, the issue in Kenya about this cult thing. And I love the fact that it has been categorized as a cult. Not even trying to pretend that this religion, no. I think the right word of it, it's a cult. And let me tell you what happens in cults. People are forced or are directed to believe in a particular aspect. They're like, I've had people have a cult, coffee cult in Europe. You've seen all these things over social media. You've had people shoot others in schools because of a cult. That you've had also some of the Muslim extremists who say that when you die, detonate yourself, you go to Jannah. All those are cults. But this, all that we see also bring to question into what Uganda had moved into. Don't you think we should think of regulating these so-called religious institutions? Who can qualify to be head of a congregation? One of the challenges, I managed to watch a bit of Watoto prayer service on Sunday, and they were saying, I had one of the preachers saying that they also have a group of people in the north who are seceding from their church, trying to start up another. You know, you've seen all these kind of things, and all these things happen because of greed. Every pastor in this town was part of another church. Like, who is regulating? When can someone start?
Most of these cults, I think, masquerade indeed as religious
yes,
you know, groups.
Definitely.
And I think this is where it becomes very confusing. Like they deal with a lot of specificity. They have certain ways of...
And they tie themselves on that particular area.
Yes. So masquerading as church, it becomes hard, because now you can't even attach this to, you know, church leaders.
No, you wouldn't.
They won't be able to rule that out.
This so-called, okay, I don't call it so-called, the Interreligious Council, all these bodies that govern churches, do they go ahead to check into some of what these guys are preaching? Because some
well,
of these preachings, if you see the end result, is that this is something that they have taught them from the very beginning of the inception of church. So they are telling them, this is our belief, this is what we are going to do, this is the end goal. So is there any intervention from some of these bodies that are governing churches to come and see what you're preaching to the congregation? So that we stop such kind of preachings. That is where the huge problem is.
Yes,
we're allowing it crossover.
Our problem, first as a country, I'll speak for Uganda, and when it comes to religious, I must say a bit of some information there. One, right from our constitution, it gives the right of freedom of worship. That is why Uganda, contrary to some countries, don't have a specific religion. For example, there are some countries where Islam is the religion. You don't come up with anything. That's why you find people in witchcraft, they have their right, because the constitution gives that right. Now, when we come to such bodies, these bodies are, you become a member, but you retain with your independency. You get it? The Interreligious Council brings everybody on board, but it doesn't meddle or peddle in the way you worship or you practice your worship.
That's not meddling if you're regulating.
No, but it doesn't regulate that. So if you're from Church of Uganda can't regulate, but look at what happened in northern Uganda recently when they wanted a certain bishop, and the guy broke away from the Anglican Church with a sect and formed, is it called the Reformed Anglican Church, something, those that were fighting recently. We did a story here. You know, so as long as we still have freedom of worship, anything, these cults sometimes begin like a genuine religion, some begin like a kind of
So can we
witchcraft.
say it's a loophole in
yes.
the freedom of worship?
That's why recently when we had the faith and, it was the religious and faith-based organizations bill, if you remember, what people called Father Lukodo bill.
Yes.
These are some of the changes they put on table before His Excellency. They said you can't regulate our worship, it is contrary to our constitution, because everyone is given a right to worship the way they want.
Do you know,
It's going to be a long way ahead.
Sadly,
Yes.
just for me lastly, sadly is that there are things you people call the elites can do that the people who didn't even ever see a blackboard can't do. And that has made me to get to a conclusion that one of the biggest problems of a country like Uganda, or even many third world countries, is these so-called elites. The percentage of their uselessness grows daily.
They have been categorized to be one of the biggest contributions.
They are the biggest
to the
problem
yes.
to the growth of this country. She has given you an example, a person who's a hair hostess.
You'd expect quite a lot from
Your
her.
exposure
is I mean, it's
they also they tell you
insurmountable.
not to eat that you're going to see God.
Well, it's good morning.
It's good in the stomach that you get hungry.
Well, this story did take over the newswaves over the weekend after we did cite some of these happenings in Kenya. And we cannot say that Uganda is any different, because previously we've witnessed something close to that, or at least something operational in that format. Cults. How do we do away with these in our societies? Because clearly they have become very detrimental. Seeing people being employed to fast until they die. Now, what use is that? I mean, what use is that, or how relevant is this anyway to our modern day society? Well, I will leave that up to you entirely to think about it. And if you are actively engaged in a certain cult right now as we speak, maybe you need to sit down and think about it. What do you take away from all of this? Does this nourish your spiritual needs? Does this nourish your physical needs? I mean, what kind of needs does this cult nourish? For now, we'll go into our local stories and international stories as well. Robert.
We begin with the burial of the former, that is a permanent secretary, Office of the Prime Minister, Keith Mahakanizi. The late former secretary, Office of the Prime Minister, Keith Mahakanizi, was laid to rest at his country home in Ramayongo, Lyantonde district. The funeral service was attended by, among others, the Prime Minister of Uganda, Robina Nabanja, the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Thomas Tayewa, ministers, friends, family friends, and relatives.
Well, the First Lady and Minister of Education and Sports, Mrs. Janet Museveni, has appreciated the partnerships between Uganda and the Algerian government and the scholarship program that has benefited several Ugandan students for the last 30 years. The Algerian government has been offering over 100 scholarships to Ugandan nationals. The ambassador of the People's Republic of Algeria to Uganda has paid a courtesy call on the First Lady Janet Museveni at State House in Nakasero.
And Eastern Uganda is blessed to host the 2023 edition of the National Labour Day celebrations in Busoga district of Namutumba. A section of leaders in the region view this as an opportunity to sprinkle deeper the message of wealth creation into the people of the area. State Minister for Housing, Pasis Namuganza, said road infrastructure remains one of the hindrances for farmers to easily access markets.
Now, former Apostolic Nuncio to Belgium Archbishop Augustine Kasuja has urged the daughters of St. Paul to be models of social communication as they strive to bring an end to moral decay and corruption in society. The Archbishop Kasuja made his call during Mass at Christ the King Parish in Kampala.
Crossing over to the international scene, world military spending reached an all-time high of $2.24 trillion in 2022 as Russia's invasion of Ukraine fueled a sharp jump in military spending across Europe, according to a leading defense think tank. Now, global spending rose for the 8th consecutive year, the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute said on Monday in its annual report on global military expenditure. There was a 13% rise in Europe, the steepest in at least 30 years. CIPRI said most of that was linked to Russia and Ukraine, but other countries also stepped up military spending in response to perceived Russian threats. Several countries have evacuated diplomats and citizens from Sudan's capital as fierce fighting continues to rage in Khartoum. The US and UK announced on Sunday they had flown diplomats out of the country. France, Germany, Italy, and Spain are among other countries also organizing evacuations starting on Sunday. A vicious power struggle between the regular army and a powerful paramilitary force has led to violence across the country. U.S. authorities say they had airlifted fewer than 100 people with 3 Chinook helicopters on Sunday morning in a fast and clean operation. The U.S. Embassy in Khartoum is now closed, and a tweet on its official feed says it is not safe enough for the government to evacuate private U.S. citizens. The UK government managed to airlift British diplomats and their families out of the country in what was described as a complex and rapid operation. Foreign Minister James Cleverly said options to evacuate the remaining British nationals in Sudan were severely limited.
Now, in another story, Kenyan police has exhumed 47 bodies near the coastal town of Malindi as they investigate a preacher said to have told followers to starve to death. The bodies of the children were among the dead. Police said exhumations are ongoing, and the shallow graves are in Shakahola Forest, where 15 members of the Good News International Church were rescued last week. Church leader Paul Mackenzie Ntega is in custody pending a court appearance. According to the state broadcaster KBC, they described him as a cult leader and reported that 58 graves have so far been identified. One of the graves is believed to contain the bodies of 5 members of the same family, 3 children and their parents. Mr. Ntege has denied wrongdoing but has been refused bail. He insists that he shut down his church in 2019. He allegedly told followers to starve themselves in order to meet Jesus. In another story, Formula E is one of the greenest racing series in the world, as vehicles that the racers drive are fully electric. So it was curious when climate change protesters interrupted a race in Germany on Sunday. Several activists in white t-shirts climbed the fences at the Tempelhof venue in Berlin and sat in front of their cars that were already off of the starting grid. Now they posted a video of the protesters disrupting the start of the race. The protesters were whisked away by the security guards from the track. It is time to slow down because we are on a highway to climate hell with our foot on the accelerator, the group told Reuters. A Formula E spokesperson said that the protest was unrelated to the event.
Well, it's Good Morning Uganda, and we're still with you. Of course, much later on, Mollen will be giving you more from weather and climate in that very specific segment. But for now, we'll also look at some of the big stories that are popping up in our dailies. This morning, we do have the Daily Monitor much later, and of course, we'll be sharing with you some other big stories in our other daily papers. Felix, what are we looking at as a big story?
Well, of course, in the Daily Monitor, we'll be looking at some of the big stories, but of course, the big headline, which is Uganda has at least 1,500 billionaires.
Wow.
Earlier on, I was asking Bob, where do you fall?
So who's a billionaire in this perspective?
Honestly, you can't tell me we are counting 1, 2, 3, 1,000.
You can't take off one position for yourself.
And I don't see Mollen, Philomena, Robert, like it is 1,500 people.
Felix, I'm currently a billionaire. Millionaire. So
Really? From billionaire to millionaire?
No, I'm a millionaire.
You'll be soon.
I'll be a billionaire.
Everyone in Uganda is a millionaire.
Out
Out of 1,500 people, guys.
Yes.
I,
We need to fix ourselves somewhere.
honestly, yeah, it is being disguised. There must be some lie in it, but it is what it is. That's what any
But
monitor is
Ugandans were
giving
rich
us.
people.
You didn't know?
I did not know that.
Oh, people
Go to
have
nightlife.
billions.
But anyway, Angola enters crowded DRC war theater, and also Buvuma women MP, 5 others face charges over illegal assembly. And of course, they give you here Mwakanizi gets 11-gun salute at his send-off. Much more of those stories in the Daily Monitor.
Now, crossing over to the New Vision, government rescues stranded Ugandans in Sudan. And Mao joins General Muhoozi for birthday celebrations in Kigali. And Keith Mwakanizi gets 11-gun salute. And of course, when it comes to Sunday and church, remain firm, Kazimba tells the faithful. And UNEB to reprint PLE results slips. There you go. So get yourself a copy of the New Vision and the Daily Monitor to get a whole 360 coverage of the news that happened over the weekend. But also, as we are at it, it's very important for you to remember to prioritize your health. What have you done? What do you intend to do to make sure that you are in check?
Well, one prominent and common is prevention is better than cure. I know many of you have heard of this, grown up hearing this. So how do you do that? Hallelujah, jinga tea, hallelujah, tamarind drink. Now, this prevent you from falling sick. Don't wait to treat your body because it is not productive when you're not feeling fine. So just boost your immune system. Any of these bottles is just 1,500. Any that is a retail shop, supermarket, the drinks are there. And I guarantee you, just take regular consumption of these and you'll see the change and the savings you'll make.
Well, we'll go for a break and also song of the day. Today being Monday, it's a fresh new week, so we would love for you to start on a new slate of things. And when we get back, we'll be having our discussion in the newsreel. We'll be back shortly. Good morning. Good morning, Uganda. The date today is 24th of April 2023. We are coming closer to the end of the month, slowly but surely. Welcome back from the weekend. My name is Philomena, Mastiko. An eventful weekend, I must say, of course, coupled by the weather that did not really have anybody guessing what it would look like. But also, it's been a very long weekend, I must say, all the way from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and now we are back to the grind. Well, like I did say, the weekend was quite eventful, but we cannot overlook the major, I could say, the major event that happened over there after we finally, or the country finally laid to rest the former minister, the former permanent secretary for the office of the Prime Minister, but who also once held a major position as being the head of the Treasury in the Ministry of Finance, that is the late Keith Muhakanizi. Quite moving speeches were said over there, and of course don't be surprised if we share some of the key things that we picked from some of these speeches. Well, when I say we, of course, the whole team is here to start off the week with you, Robert, Mollen and Felix. Robert, good morning.
Good morning. Well, like indeed you said, this is the Pearl of Africa, and every time it takes me back to the words of Winston Churchill, who arrived in Uganda and looked at the evergreen environment and said, well, this is the Pearl of Africa. But I think for me, what took me over the weekend was the fact that our brothers and sisters that are stranded in Sudan will be returning home via Ethiopia. That is according to our ambassador there. They said, well, the 300, they have sent some number of buses to see them back home. That is forceful evacuation. But one question comes to my mind, team and our viewers, is it leaders who stay in power for some time that are the problems of this country, or something else? Gaddafi left Libya a long time ago. Saddam Hussein did the same. Sudan, we see Bashir, but none of these countries has had peace. So that is a question that is lingering in my mind. Sometimes when I hear people who talk about longevity in leadership as a problem to countries, but even when these leaders leave, peace is never restored permanently.
Well, it's a very sad. If I would answer, probably, Robert, I would say that the leaders that stay in power could be part of the problem. I believe there are very many other supporting Good morning, Uganda. The date today is 24th of April 2023. We are coming closer to the end of the month, slowly but surely. Welcome back from the weekend. My name is Philomena, Mastiko. An eventful weekend, I must say, of course, coupled by the weather that did not really have anybody guessing what it would look like. But also, it's been a very long weekend, I must say, all the way from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and now we are back to the grind. Well, like I did say, the weekend was quite eventful, but we cannot overlook the major, I could say, the major event that happened over there after we finally, or the country finally laid to rest the former minister, the former permanent secretary for the office of the Prime Minister, but who also once held a major position as being the head of the Treasury in the Ministry of Finance, that is the late Keith Muhakanizi. busy. Quite moving speeches were said over there. And of course, don't be surprised if we share some of the key things that we picked from some of these speeches. Well, when I say we, of course, the whole team is here to start off the week with you, Robert, Mollen, and Felix. Robert, good morning.
Good morning. Well, like indeed you said, this is the Pearl of Africa. And every time it takes me back to the words of Winston Churchill, who arrived in Uganda and looked at the evergreen environment and said, well, this is the Pearl of Africa. But I think for me what took me over the weekend was the fact that our brothers and sisters that are stranded in Sudan will be returning home via Ethiopia. That is according to our ambassador there. They said, well, the 300, they have sent some number of buses to see them back home. That is forceful evacuation. But one question comes to my mind, Tim and our viewers, is it leaders who stay in power for some time that are the problems of this country, or something else? Gaddafi left Libya a long time ago. Saddam Hussein did the same. Sudan, we see Bashir, but none of these countries has had peace. So that is a question that is lingering in my mind. Sometimes when I hear people who talk about longevity in leadership as a problem to countries, but even when these leaders leave, peace is never restored permanently.
Well, it's a very, very sad. If I would answer, probably, Robert, I would say that the leaders that stay in power could be part of the problem. I believe there are very many other supporting
at the best rates with the new Bona voice bundles. Stay connected anytime, anywhere, with minutes valid for calls on all networks. Dial *100*1#. Select voice bundles and select Bona voice bundles today. Airtel, the smartphone network.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning, Uganda. Welcome to the newsreel. It is the 24th of April, 2023, Monday at that. Welcome back from the long weekend. It was very long indeed, all the way from Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But we are back here and serious business is bound to happen. Well, 2 minutes past 7 a.m. My name is Philomena Mastiko, once again with Felix and Kunda, ready to have you and ready to engage you in our discussion this morning, tackling one of the biggest categories of people or population here in Uganda. When we talk about the youth, when we talk about the adolescents, we know that there is quite a number of challenges that they are presented with during this time of growth. But there is a recent report that was released by Assessment of Life Skills and Values in East Africa, and they were looking at some of the biggest challenges that have hindered the development of this category of people. Now, according to this report, they did look at 4 focal points. Number one, they were assessing quite the proficiency of adolescents, especially Ugandan adolescents, in problem solving when it comes to self-awareness, when it comes to collaboration and respect, and how all these lead to the growth and development of this specific category of people, but also what kind of contribution do they bring to a country like ours. We know for a fact that Uganda's population, the biggest percentage of the population is the youth. That means, I don't know what would be defining as a youth in this term, Felix, but I could probably think maybe from 18 to what, 30 what? 30 something?
Probably
Maybe
extreme 35, around 35.
35. Although I know a couple of individuals who are in their early 30s, but they wouldn't want to be categorized
They'll
as,
be fine.
as the youth. But whether you like it or
They have
not,
to deal with it.
for as long as you follow this category,
problem we are dealing with.
yes, for as long as you belong here, between 18 and 35, you are the person, you are the man or the woman that we're going to be talking about this morning. So, and we would very much appreciate to get your 2 cents on how best we can have this specific group of people be productive when it comes to the development of a country, when it comes to the development of our communities and our societies. And let us know the best way to do that. What do you think? Some of the propositions you could be pulling out to the table. And get into our Twitter, #UBCGMU, and you can also use our WhatsApp platform, 0709-602-592. Well, according to this, there's something very interesting about this report where they actually say problem solving amongst this category of people is very, very low. Felix, between me and you and also His Excellency, he has said on several occasions that we have to be driven towards being able, having the ability to solve our problems here in the country. But when you see reports like this coming out and showing that the percentage or the rate at which we can actually solve problems, especially amongst this youth, is very low, does that make you feel, does that worry you? Because certainly for me, it worries me so much.
Yeah. It's quite directly impactful on how far a country can go, or probably how much it can stale, for that matter. But for us to get composure in what we are discussing, Philo, we must agree that there's a problem. Now, the problem being that this group of people we are talking about has no direct ability to survive. Their failure to solve problems means they can't survive, because one of the tools of survival is problem solving.
I mean, we are surrounded by problems every now and then.
So yeah, you must know how to survive amidst all these problems. But you may want to understand the, if I use the words like the nomenclature of this problem. This is how it comes into play. Let's look at an average youth in Uganda. How exposed are they? Okay, the paradigm thought of them being able to solve a problem is their ability to identify the problem. Do they see a problem? That's the beginning of the whole discussion. Does this group of Ugandans see any problem? Because identification is the first, that's why when you're doing research, for some of you who have done research, you must identify a problem question, because that is what will be the pivot of your whole research. There will be no need for you to do research if you don't realize that there's a gap for you to fill with this research you're creating. Can these people identify any problem? Do they see a problem? On a spectrum of 100 youths today, how many feel comfortable with the kind of life they are living? Comfort is one of the biggest challenges that desists or does clouds the judgment, let alone that limits these people from being innovative and hence solving problems. Now, how does this come about? Let's try to just draw back a bit. Let's look at 3 major spheres for us to deal with why we are in this position. One, you look at the beginning of it all is the family, all right? The second, to the same, is society. And the third, to crown it all up, is the administration or governance. When you look at all these three institutions you are bringing into play, you
Yes.
want to first and foremost start with the family. How equipped is the family to represent the need to solve problems? Are they giving from what they have? How many families in this country can solve their problems by themselves?
When it gets down to family level?
Because that's where it starts. We only do things we have seen. Have you heard of families where you see the father was a painter, the children are being in that line? It's easy for you to relate with something you've grown up seeing, or the things you know. You get the point. I think you've heard some of the arguments in the academia that we are pushing on parents. Why are you, for example, you, a person who has done business in Chikuwo over the years and has been a success for you and the family, why do you want to push your child to be a doctor? You're forcing them to be a doctor or a lawyer because you think it is prestigious to have a lawyer in a home. But there's something you know very well a family can easily penetrate through. That has been the argument, and that's where family comes in. Because the beginning of the story is with family. How many families have appreciated the normative of solving problems? Let's go to society. What is the attitude of society towards problem solving in this country? How many families can ably today say that we can survive through our own means? The biggest disability we faced as a country was, and this is in terms of survival, one, colonialism. And I'll explain that. Colonialism, because it ushered us into a lifestyle of dependency. A lifestyle of master, servant, a lifestyle of servitude, sort of like style of life. And that has created deep comfort for our people, that someone will bend their life on the fact that they are working. You can imagine someone studies for 20 years to be employed, and that is the goal. You spend all for someone to look for a job. That's a colonial master-servant approach to life, and for them it was defendable, because for them they needed it. For them to hold their grip on administering their values and intentions on us, they had to create that sort of appreciation. But we have been colonized, were independent, how many years now? 60? 60
Yes,
years. Last year I think we got 60,
we made,
if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, about 60. But we are still focusing on a colonial approach to survival. As I've given you an example, everyone going through school today is studying to do what?
To become some sort of
servants.
Yes.
To be some sort of, to bring to life this whole appreciation of master, slave. Actually, employees are slaves. And I don't mean to say you, I don't know why you are.
I mean, we could be slaves to the system, but when you talk about this,
but it's the reality.
And I totally understand where you're coming from, Felix. But also talking about education, could we say that the way we've, because education ideally it's one of the benchmarks of a productive youth population of any country, but could you say that the way we have interpreted education here in Uganda is just the wrong way? Because education could ideally be used for very many things, and we cannot do away with the fact that we as the youth actually need the education. But have we misinterpreted education?
Philomena, we don't need education.
Are you sure we don't need education?
And I can prove it. I can take you on that. Let me give you an example. When you're coming to this studio, there's a script. And there's someone out there who's supposed to give a script for us, TV, year in, year out. Does that bring the best out in you?
Absolutely not.
Unfairly for TV, some of us can speak what we think, our minds, our opinions on different topics. But let's imagine people who work in banks. Tell us. They are routine employees.
Standardized systems of doing things. Yes.
Deposit, withdraw, deposit, withdraw. You do that for 30 years. your mind will never solve any problem with that kind of approach to life. Your mind actually becomes accustomed to withdraw, deposit,
And
withdraw,
depositing.
deposit. You do that for 5 years because life, patterns of activities we do become our identity. You get the point? It clouds our innovativeness. That education you're saying, it is not a need. Stop using words like we need it. We don't. We have been made to believe.
Yes.
You know, we're talking about the cult. Actually, I want to categorize it now as
Education is now becoming
it has
part
been
of the cult.
culturized. Yes. Because now we are starting to make it, as I've told you, let's be honest. Who studies for nursery is how many years? 3 years?
Yes.
That's pre-primary.
The pre-primary
is
section.
3 years.
Yes.
Primary is 7. Those are probably 10 years. You go to secondary for now 6 years. And then university for 3 years. That's about 9 plus 10, 19 years.
4 years.
For some of us who study 5 years, it's about already 20 years. Then 20 years to study. I have my young brother who's a lawyer, just graduated from LDC about last year. Man is suffering. You go to a law firm, they give you 50,000 a week. You've studied for 20 good years to earn 50,000. The boy Omwana Sika Chapat in this country earns, I think, on a daily about 30,000. These kids who are trolling sugar canes on the roads in Kampala, they make almost 90,000 a day. You're here waving your ties and your cheap coats in town because you're saying you're a lawyer. Now, that's the education you say we need.
No, that is why I said education is misinterpreted, because ideally we're looking at a bit, because I mean we have been talking about how we are changing the kind of education we are getting, being more practical. And maybe when you say about education, we have been enslaved to the previous type of education.
Colonial.
Yes.
Because for them, their intention was to create what I said, master, they were the masters. They needed servants. So they brought this kind of education that would create that atmosphere that you're not supposed to think. We are supposed to think for you. You're supposed to fall within our cut-out plan. Now, for us, foolishly, we also, you know how ducklings move.
We are following through. Yes.
The first one falls in the ditch, the second, the third, all of them. We also were like, when colonialists left, we said, let's stay with that. I've time and again questioned these institutions where I teach by the
well, but we're changing the approach of education.
No.
Yes.
Why do we then still talk about unemployment? I have told you, this, third world countries suffer from primitiveness. And let me tell you why. And this is the problem of innovativeness of the youth you are talking about. Someone thinks it is fashionable to be a lawyer, to have a tie like this, put on a jacket in a white shirt, and earn nothing. But no one earns from a title. Council. Where do they pay council?
Yes.
At the end of the month. But I've given you an example because I interact with these guys in Chisenyi. There's a boy who wakes up and buys a chigari and goes and they buy sugar canes and they'll go on the road. At the close of the day, the minimum amount he has, that young man in the pocket, is 30,000.
I'll give you another example. The fishermen.
Thank you.
I have interacted with a couple of
Thank
fishermen.
you.
There is nothing related to education.
There's
All
no
they know
qualification.
is that they have their fishing nets, boats, yes, and they go up and about their business. You will find a fisherman walking away with about 7 to 8 million in a day. Yes.
Because they can. Do you know how much a fish costs to go to Busega? The smallest is 25. Now, if someone can sell 3 of those in a day.
To the elites.
I think the elites afford fish. Come on, be serious. These elites are unemployed. they are pretending. They are living lives on loans. I'm telling you, and this, it's a reality. Young lawyers, young doctors have to drive a loan car. You run a loan suit. You're living in your life is on you credit yourself. Now, you tell me a fisherman who has a loan. Honestly, to buy a boat, or a kasi, or a net, Those things are cheap. But that person makes 70,000. I've ever been one time in Gerenge, somewhere Garuga, and we had some work we were doing there, some research. But I sat there for a day, and some guy went in the morning, he came back, 12 fish. And every fish he was selling it, he didn't, for him, he wasn't doing, he did retail. Every emitwalage, the big ones, 30,000. Now, 7 times 3. If he does that every day, in a month, how much? But we are all, we have squeezed ourselves in Makerere, Mukono, Mkumba.
And we've left out lots of gaps in the other
fields. There
are
so many gaps, Philomena. Honestly, look at people who are doing construction.
But in school, Uganda will tell you to go and fill those gaps. So can we say this is a shortcut?
You know, again, it brings us back to the topic about problem solving.
Yes.
You need to identify a problem because the solution, you can earn from it. There's a time in this country, people who used to collect rubbish were being laughed at. Today, who doesn't want that tender? How much do you pay for your own rubbish? A month, we part with 25,000. Now, if you have 7 families every month, how much money do you earn a month? You get the point? Now, rubbish is valuable today, but who wants to do rubbish work? You find young girls earning 20, how much? 500,000, 600,000, yes. Then taxing, then transport. They are lying you to get loans to buy cars. They are lying you to get loans to buy land.
But now,
what
Felix,
is the use of that?
If we're going to look at a productive, productive youth population, what are we going to look at? What would be some of the things we would use as parameters of a very productive youth? Because clearly education, we're giving it about 50-50. You've called it what we are trying, we've started to make it a cult. Yes.
Let me tell you, and this I don't fear to say, the need of any Ugandan is just to be warmed. In Uganda, you just need to be warmed up. Education should give you an opportunity to expose your knowledge. Okay? And exposure is in the general sense. If you did general paper, I don't know if people in your area you are doing.
Well, we did it. Ours was the last when we did general paper. So.
General paper, every child in Uganda will need to sit a general paper. For me, that's the requirement. But let me tell you, education is Ugandan education, and I'm being specific. This education we are trading, the master-slave education, you know, the user, employer-employee education, is one of the biggest disabilities to Ugandan youth. Okay? How do you teach someone for 20 years to be a secretary? You teach someone for 20 years to be an artist. Do they teach art?
Well,
have a degree in art. Degree in art. What do you teach an artist?
But there are people who are actually earning from that.
And they have a degree in art?
Yes, there are people who are actually earning.
These kids on the streets who are drawing, which art school
degree
did
they get?
When you find talent, you need to teach someone talent. Philomena, and this is a society. That's why I gave you 3 folds: family, society, and administration or governance. How? Let's just look at one by one and how we can help ourselves. Let's start with family. Parents out there, be real. Be real to yourselves. There are things you don't have. I've had families where parents come and say, Munyumba muberemu ko diguri. And these are going to be primitive parents. Sometimes they think it's prestigious.
Well, because previously it was like that.
I don't even, who started these things? But probably it was marketing for the universities when they wanted. Someone says, Muberemu called diguri. Now, some of us have various of them, but I've never been called by someone to say, we are paying them every month. It's not, people don't pay for degrees. People pay us for value. And I can say that again. There are people who are paid because of the value they carry, not the degrees or academic standard. I have a big problem with Ugandan education system.
And yes, when we talk about education, does that also involve skill training?
That's not even education. That's skill training. And so
Isn't it some sort of education as well?
Now, I want to bring you back to something I said, value. Philomena, the only reason why UBC would call you to sit here and work, because they saw a value in you. It was about bringing women. They could have picked,
Yes.
There's some value. Now, we trade value. When you appreciate a certain value, you can solve a problem. Because you have some value, you can identify a problem and fix it. Now, we have a population that has no value. You look for a reason why you want to work with them, zero. They can't talk.
Yes. They don't give you
They can't even
reason
talk.
to.
Talking. They can't be smart. They can't keep time. They can't say thank you. They can't say please. They can't say. They have no values. Solving problems requires you to carry some value as an individual. And the family has a great role in creating this value for you. Now, what is the family role? The family role, for starters, is creating what we call the basic values. What are basic values? Survival instincts. For example, speech. Have you heard of kids who, as I told you, kid doesn't know how to say please? That's a value. Have you been in places and you're given to choose among these people, but you choose someone because of their demeanor and character? They may not be the best academicians, but you choose them because of their mannerisms, because of their character, because of their attitudes.
You know, when you say that, in reference to this report, one of the things they did highlight that another factor that is failing this population, it could be discipline. The fact that they lack self-awareness of some of these. And I think in one way or another, it has a relationship to what you're talking about.
Direct relationship,
yes, the
Philomena.
values. If you're not self-aware of what actually you bring to the table or the kind of mannerisms you present, I mean, it could fail you. And that is why very many people have found themselves apparently unemployed amongst the youth.
For example, you go to hospital. Have you seen, you can be the best surgeon, but without the right attitude, you'll get stuck with your surgeon skills and they'll be useless. You must couple these professions with something. This is why I'm bringing in family. Family is at the start of it. What do you teach your kids? Situation awareness. Okay? Anger management. You find a doctor, ngakute Dr. Munetai. Can you imagine such a scenario? Dr. Philomena has held Dr. Mollen. They could, like they have emotional intelligence. Last time we saw doctors sitting in the middle of the road. And then in the morning you want me to come to you, Mr. Doctor.
Come to your private practice, yes.
Situation awareness. What do I do in this? Those are things taught at family level. Now, when you come to society, society has a role. Because we are looking at composing a fine youth to be able to solve the problems they face. And that's how you change the country, for that matter. Now, you come to society. Society has a role. Society, what is your role in framing these kids? When kids go out there, do you apprehend them for the wrong things they have done? How do you support them? If you have a village full of drunkards, that is the only example kids see when they go to school and come back. How won't they become these drunkards? You have people giving birth at the age of 13 as
We're
a society.
seeing a number of children dropping out of school.
It is normal.
Yes.
If you create a society where teenage pregnancy is normal, how do you expect these young girls to become pilots? Because for them, they think, actually, they will be competing at the age of 15. Yes, because it is a normal practice in that society. You find young men on drugs at very early ages. You find young boys, but in that community, because now it becomes a desired behavior for the young ones in that society. So it's a society role. Now you come to the governance. Governance in terms of legislation and policy.
Yes.
How do you assist this youth? I have heard Ugandan government many a times stumble on projects, youth livelihood, yoga, what.
We have a couple of them.
There are very many.
Yes, parish.
One would say they are well thought, but do they sync well with the realities we face as a youth? Do they think well? When you fix them, are they compatible? Can they?
Will they give you that?
Will they fit in with the challenges we are
Yes.
facing? What does a youth today need? Okay, when a youth goes to university, who do they need to be in front of them? Okay, because how many accountants can Uganda accommodate?
Because the question is between, do they need the money? Do they need skills? What do they need exactly?
Survival and value. Does our education teach them to survive? And does education give you value? I've given you. Now, we must create avenues that are value-based.
You know, you talk about values again, and I remembered, you will still give somebody money to go and work on their skills,
Yeah,
to go and
that's
start
not
up
a
businesses, and they will still misuse that money. The other day, we were talking about some of these youth livelihood funds, and we realized that most of the groups here, most of the youth people
Have
that pick the
collapsed
money,
already.
some of them picked the money and they did not put it to use.
Some of them went to money.
And I mean, they have failed to use what it is meant to do. If you're supposed to start up a business, there is no accountability for the money that was picked from these funds.
But you know, how
We are
do you
not doing
account-
ourselves a favor. We are actually giving them
Philo,
handouts.
You
but
can't put the horse before the cat. Rather, the cat before the horse. The reverse is the truth. One has to pull the other. You get the point. Now, when you think the youth in this country don't need money. They want it, but they don't need it. Money is for people who have worked for it. I don't know where, by the way, I don't know who started this thing of giving people money in this country.
But we can
What have
also,
they done?
but we can also, we can't ignore that there is a group of youth that has actually
it is not
used
there.
this money.
Philomena, it is not there. Don't be lied. Where are they? Why don't they come on TV and we show the world? UBC is a government. Why don't they come here and we show Good Morning Uganda is here? You can't give people money. What have they done to earn that money? Giving money, it is a response to work. Should be a remuneration. What are you remunerating youth for? To give them money. Give youth what to do. Let the government go and at least rear a chicken and tell them to pick eggs. Then they give them money.
Not giving them handouts for them to go and start poultry farming.
For what? What have they done? You're not helping them. You know, the youth are just duping these people. This is simple politics. But let's be honest. Youth in Uganda need to be helped to accumulate some value. Value. You ask a youth, what can you do? Don't so much. You come with your degree in law, but what can you do? Then they tell you, I studied, I've said, what can you do? Not what you studied, but what can you do? Because I'm looking for the value
outside
in you.
of that scope of education you picked.
Let me tell you, guys, whoever is listening, don't be deceived by education, our dear viewers. Don't be ever deceived, parents and employers. Don't employ degrees. I have told you this, I am a lecturer, and I've done this for some time. Don't employ degrees. I hear diplomas. Employ value.
But we are coming
and
to a
ability.
realization of that lately. If you've interacted with some of the employers, like we should, you know, they are starting to notice that a degree is just a degree, and that's just about it. Well,
you'll have a shock of your life.
Well, before we get into that shock, there is some feedback coming in. And somebody here, one of our viewers, talking about how doing things like the colonial masters set them is one of the major causes of poverty in Africa. Whether we like it or not, we have to actually come to terms with that fact. And I do have also some feedback coming in here from another viewer saying that what about employment, especially among us, the youth? There are certain things they need to learn. What work is, the difference between work, job, and employment, and what are the major resources of life. Say time, effort, energy, health, and whatnot, knowledge, attitude, later on finance. And again, this highlights some of the things that you did talk about. And also other resources available like land, water, respect with total discipline, etc. They all follow. Then unemployment of the youth will be solved. Indeed, when you talk about, I think, resources, he clearly talks about what have we used, what we have, what have we used? Yes, how have we actually maximized it to the, capacity, or we still want to be employed. We are still waiting for job opportunities to come through so that we can apply and go and have those opportunities.
And the irony that comes with this topic is this, probably if you don't want us to break it, you know that no one can help you, youth. Let me just put it to you straight. You're your own problem. You are your own solution. In Kampala today, youth wake up at midday. Now, you've woken up at midday, and then you're saying government is... First of all, you are a poor person, mentally, physically, but you're categorizing work. In the sequel, I don't do this work, I don't do this, but you are poor mentally, physically, and your family where you're from is poor, your clan is poor, but for you, you've categorized work. In the I don't.
And you're poor.
I don't. Dude, who are you? Now, first of all, you see, and then you say, it is Museveni, poor man. You get the point. The thing is that, if you don't, and we must, the problem is that you see, people in Uganda are hypocrites. We have fallen prey to wanting to say things that people want to hear. Don't tell them they won't vote me. Tobanyiza. Some of us are not going to stand for political offices anytime soon. So your votes can sleep on them. But the reality is what you're facing. Youth today in this country, they compose 70%, yet they are the most useless. Because you can imagine, out of the 70%,
big problem.
It's a reality.
Yes.
70% of the youth in this country, how many of them pay taxes?
And how
we are
they pay
surviving
taxes?
on these musees. You're insulting. You use this. Because the Wazee is the 30%, and the ones making Uganda survive. How many youth out of the 70% own businesses? And on every year they file returns to URA.
Well, we are looking at how best can communities
how many of them own land that they can cultivate?
Adolescents productive.
I can tell you what they own. Torn trousers. For them, they feel it is the way to go. Insulting people. The youth have been given an opportunity to have something called social media. Social media was basically intended to create a space for the youth to expose themselves. That's the reality. That was an opportunity. The youth to expose their abilities. What are they doing on social media? They have competitions of big bums. Who has a bigger bum? Who can abuse more? You've seen what youth are doing. Girls are showing off all body parts. Boys are... What are they doing with their lives? And then, that's why I told you, families must be careful in this day and age. We are losing already as parents. And it is sad. Do you know that I have had scenarios where parents have been beaten?
By their own children?
The parent told you, sit up. Sit up. Then the kid tells the parent, I want to do it.
Well, the conversation is still going on.
How to employ such a person? If a person doesn't fear the parent, Philomena,
what's the guarantee that this person is going to actually respect the employer?
You, Philomena, in your Philomena, how will this employee respect you? These are the youth we are talking about to help. For you want to help them. They don't want to be helped. Youth today are stealing. You go to the news. Every time there's a bulletin about a youth did this. A youth, for you, Even us who want to employ you are scared of you. Because you will beat us.
To our socials, Twitter, hashtag UBCGMU. How best can communities make the youth and adolescents more productive? And also looking at some of the parameters that we should use to ensure that the youth is very productive to the country.
Just give me 1 minute.
No, I am not going to give you 1 more minute. Please. Since you're part of the youth, I wouldn't want to.
Don't say that. Don't say that. But honestly, I think, lastly for me, Philomena, parents must take center stage in the lives of their children. Us up here, we are suffering a lot because of bad upbringing. And this is evident in what we see on social media. How disrespectful. We have had scenarios. You see someone of 21 abusing a president. Vulgar. They've abused the Katikiro, they've abused the king. But these are youth. When we grow up, and same thing, when people are raised up, how do you even just looking badly at a parent would cause you woe?
Yes.
They would lynch, not just beat you, they would lynch you.
The whole family,
like,
actually,
honestly,
yes.
But today, someone in S1, Avumata president. President can have his issues, and all of us have issues probably. But how do you go and take your phone and you say the president is a fool, the president S1? You don't even know if you'll pass S4 or go to P2, or, but you're already abusing the president. Now that person wants to be employed. We must, and parents, this is your deficiency. Be intentional on how you raise your kids. Stop pretending that the government is the problem. Government has done nothing about your children. You are the problem.
They're dealing with
Don't
the children
expect your children
raised.
to be successful if you have not equipped them with the general values of life. We are raised to say sorry, to be fearful, and secondly, take your children to churches and mosques. These kids you've used who are all over Simani.
But also we are
Apostle,
having
Prophet,
questions with churches, the church leaders every other day now and then. So, I mean, we'll look into that.
You're the first priest of your church. What are you preaching to your kids? I mean,
Well,
it
we'll
starts
look at
with
the big stories in our dailies. The Citizen, Tanzania moves from COVID pariah to shining example. Tanzania, third fastest growing economy in Africa. I would love to question how productive their youth are. And court orders Maxcom to pay Stanbic Bank 12 billion shillings. Crossing over to the Daily Nation, cult of death massacre as 39 bodies exhumed from mass graves. And jitters in military, police over Coast Guard and medical scheme. And looking at salaries, we'll put down our tools if Apple Pay is delayed, state told. Get yourself the Daily Nation, the Citizen, the Daily Monitor, and the New Vision to catch up on these stories and more. We'll be back after the break with Mollen giving you more on weather and climate. Good morning.
Iwakato, this is a quick call. I'm almost out of minutes. Now, the center.
Why rush through such important conversations? Airtel Uganda has made it possible for you to call across all networks in Uganda at the best rates with the new Bona voice bundles. Stay connected anytime, anywhere, with minutes valid for calls on all networks. Dial star 100 star 1 hash. Select voice bundles and select Bona voice bundles today. Airtel, the smartphone network.
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Jingati drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
It's the encounters with our majestic gorillas, the thrill of taking on the falls of the Nile River, the joy of discovering new traditions, and a lot more. Join us at the 2023 Pearl of Africa Tourism Expo from the 26th to the 29th of April at the Commonwealth Resort, Munyonyo. Rediscover our country's uniqueness and see what the tourism sector has in store for you. Visit www.poate.co.ug to secure your spot and get set to learn, network, and explore. The Pearl of Africa Tourism Expo is brought to you by the Uganda Tourism Board in partnership with Competitiveness and Enterprise Development Projects. Explore Uganda, the Pearl of Africa.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, good morning, Uganda. Right now, we want to take you onto the roads and look at the traffic situation. Now, if you're in areas around Mengo, that is coming in from areas of Namirembe as well, crossing over onto Wandegea, Makere, that is where we're going to focus on this morning to look at how the roads are looking like this morning. Now, if you're also coming in from the northern bypass via Sao Paulo Kagwa Road, there is a little bit of traffic that is building up over there as you head towards Nankulabi roundabout. So that is one that you might need to be mindful about. That is indicated by the red lines right there. And it does also cross over from Sao Paulo Kagwa onto the Makere Hill Road. You also have traffic that is building up right over there. And also moving further, you look at the upper roads right from Mengo, you do have, that is a little bit of traffic building up. That is as you head onto, that is Old Kampala Road. You have traffic that is starting to build up over there. Lubaga Road, if you're coming in from Bakuli side, it looks like that is quite clear for this morning. You do have green lines over there. Also, if you're coming in from the side of Mengo, Rubili Ring Road looks to be quite okay in terms of traffic for this morning. That also does lead to Namirembe Road, where you do have a few distances where you have intense traffic, but also that does clear as you get into central town, that is to the upper Kampala Road. But also again, moving further, if you look at the traffic that leads on to Wandegea right from Makere Hill Road, that is where you now see clearance in terms of traffic. It looks like that is okay to use this morning. That is joining onto Bombo Road, so that is quite fine. But also on the upper side, look at Yusufule Road. That looks to be quite okay as well, indicated by the green lines. You do have a few distances where you have orange. That means a kind of traffic building up, but then again, that is continuous, so meaning that it couldn't really delay you that much. Now you look at also some of the roads in between. Nakasero Road looks okay this morning, green lines indicating clear traffic. You do have Lumumba Avenue as well, looking at clear traffic for this morning. Chagwa Road as well, green lines, meaning that that could actually get you into town. But there is also quite some traffic building up That is Nakasero Road as you head towards, that is the roundabout on Speak Road, joining Speak Road and the City Square. So you do have just a few distances right there that have intense traffic. But other than that, moving on to Speak Road, it looks to be quite okay. That is the same road, joins onto Nile Avenue, and that does, of course, get onto the Kampala-Jinja Highway, and most of that is indicating green line, so meaning that that is quite okay for you to use this morning. We'll be crossing over onto the satellites, tapping in to see our weather updates for this morning. We'll be looking at those over Uganda, and we're looking at some of the cloudy weather that started off earlier in the morning across the Lake Victoria Basin. It looks like that is also extending towards the southwestern part of the Lake Victoria, and that will also be continuing as we do expect more rains to develop, especially towards the southwestern part of the country. We also have a few clouds that are starting to build up across the Rwenzori area, meaning that that could also be bringing a little bit of rainy weather across that is areas within Fort Portal. Even as we speak right now, quite cloudy weather over there. We're also looking at more clouds that are building up, especially for the eastern part of Lake Victoria. We're talking about Tororo towards Jinja. You also have a possibility of rains developing later in the day, and we could be looking at much more of that as the morning progresses. Also, still we're looking at a cloudy morning for central northern Uganda, as well as the Karamoja region, where we're looking at also a quite cool weather for this morning. Most of those clouds started off even throughout the night. That means we're starting off with mostly cold weather over there. We're also looking at mostly the midwestern part of the country, where we're looking at intense clouds that are building up. So that means that also that will be bringing us rains later on in the day. And much of the country is actually dominated by cloudy weather, so meaning that we could be looking at a development of wet weather activities. We'll go ahead and look at the forecast, and that is coming in from the Uganda National Meteorological Authority, and look at how the weather is looking like for this morning. Also, we tap into the temperatures that are expected for today. Mostly the southern sector still has a pickup in wet weather activities for this time of the year. That means that we might have a continuation even as we head into the month of May in terms of wet weather activities. Looking at the southwestern part of the country, that is Mbara, Ibanda, Bushenyi, as well as Rubirizi, we are forecasting isolated showers. Those will be coming in as the morning progresses, starting off with the chilly 25 degrees. Now we look at the western side of Lake Victoria. That is where we do have Masaka, Kalisizo, Zimbabwe, as well as Rakai. We are forecasting rains. We already have cloudy conditions over there that will be developing into wet weather activities for several places within the region, and much of that will be starting off with a chilly 23 degrees. Also looking at Mount Elgon Highlands, that is where we have Mbale, we have Bududa, Boko, Sironko. We are forecasting isolated showers. That is also starting off at a chilly 24 degrees. And the central part of northern Uganda, we're talking about Adjumani, Gulu, Kitgum, as well as Padel. We're forecasting rains. Those will be coming in later as the morning progresses, and that will also be starting off with a chilly 24 degrees. We do expect more rains to develop later on in the afternoon. That is for the central part of northern Uganda. Also, we look at what is expected for the eastern parts of central, where we have Ruwero, Woblenzi, Burudi, and Nakaseke. We are forecasting that is rainy conditions for much of the area, starting off quite chilly as well at 25 degrees centigrade. We do expect that that system will continue into the afternoon as well. We look at eastern Uganda. That is where we do have Soroti, Katakwi, as well as Muria and Kumi. We are forecasting sunny intervals that will be mostly a mix of clouds and sunshine throughout the morning. We do later on expect that we might have rains developing over the area, but for now temperatures will be at 25 degrees. Now the eastern side of Lake Victoria, that is where we have Tororo, Busia, Iganga, as well as Jinja, starting off with mostly a mix of clouds and sunshine, mostly cloudy for now, and that explains that temperatures also expected to be quite low. That is at 24 degrees centigrade. Now the central parts, that is the central parts of Lake Victoria Basin, where we do have Mukono, Kampala, Entebbe, as well as Sironko. That is as well as Wakiso. We are forecasting isolated showers, and that will be starting off with a chilly 23 degrees centigrade. We're also expecting that most of those systems will be crossing over onto the afternoon. Now still we're looking at more of what came from the Earth Day celebrations that was yesterday, but also we know that some countries did celebrate that also by a Saturday with changes of the time zones, and that has been mainly focused on the planet. Now this year's theme for World Earth Day 2023 is indicating invest in our planet. And this is what the message is all about. Now, there was some of the images that really did interest me is comparing Earth Day in 1970 and what we have in, that is 2023. A lot has changed, especially from going green to now going red and yellow. And that is the message that a lot of people that came out to, express their celebrations and call for action on how we can invest in our planet we're trying to actually pass across. Now, also much more of the focus was towards how we build a better environment, especially a call on planting trees. This was also seen across many platforms where we did see most of the UN organizations also coming up to say that the world should be investing right now more on planting trees and securing our planet, but also how do we make better investment in how we can keep this going. And that was the big message also coming across there. But we did also see some of the indigenous communities, especially people from the islands and also Africa, that are now crying of how the planet is warming, and they have had less to deal with what is making it warm, and that is in terms of increasing greenhouse gas emissions. Now, the call was also about stopping rich nations from investing in fossil fuels. What they are saying is, as long as we have rich nations that have the money to invest, then that means we continue to see such problems happening. And as vulnerable countries or as developing countries, we really have less to contribute to this. Now, there was also more. We did see some of the activists taking it to the streets, talking about reducing plastic. That is one way of also securing our planet as we celebrate the Earth Day, but also much more of stopping climate crime. We also did see some of these pictures that were coming across from Europe and some of the events that were arranged in the UK about talking about how we can make sure that some of these nations are not, letting crimes go. Especially right now, we've seen recent crimes that were attributed to some of the fuel companies that have failed to meet their targets, especially when it comes to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And that is where the crime is. Those are some of the messages that we're coming through as we're talking about a celebration for Earth Day. But much of that also did come as we looked at more of what the world organizations are doing, especially in terms of protecting that is the planet against the warming gases that are being put across. But also we did see climate change campaigners gathering in New York. That was at the Times Square, looking at how they can also contribute or put their voices onto this. And of course, that was on Sunday. They did call for action against global warming and cuts in plastics, while volunteers worldwide also did engage in activities like planting trees, cleaning trash, to mark the 54th annual celebration of the environment, and that is talking about the Earth Day. Now, also what is coming across is that the World Meteorological Organization did bring out a report, and that is the state of the climate for the year 2022, analyzing what is likely to happen, basing off on some of that did come through from the analysis that was made by the climate scientists as well as the meteorologists from the World Meteorological Organization. Now, what they were saying is that we are still looking at a warming trend, and now there is a huge worry about the events of La Nina coming across. Now, when we talk about La Nina, that is an event that is related to increase in temperatures, meaning that we could be looking at much more of those going across. Now, the worry is not just about temperatures rising, but what does that mean? What are the implications of these temperatures rising? Well, the report that came through, it does indicate that as 2022, we've had a lot of breaking records in terms of temperatures, that is across most areas within Europe, but also for parts of Africa as well as Asia. And the past 8 years have been the warmest on record. Now, if El Nino develops, according to what the analysis is saying, this could turn out to be, one of the most dangerous scenarios, because now you look at temperatures going high, you do have occurrences of heat waves. In the past, we've seen heat waves, especially across Europe, most of the countries that have had to deal with that. But also what it means for Africa is that now we start to see temperatures rising. We do have more drought crisis. We're already dealing with drought, and the worst has been registered across areas of Somalia, Ethiopia. Now imagine that going on a larger scale. That is the worry right there. But also in terms of increased flooding, because also with rising temperatures comes a lot of intensity with extreme weather events like flooding, landslides. We could be looking at more of that. The projection is that right now, if we don't get countries to make their targets or contribute, especially towards loss and damage and adaptation, we could be looking at more of those extreme weather events. And this was the huge talk last year in Egypt about how we can now minimize loss, especially in the face that we might not stop the rise in temperatures right away, but we can at least mitigate, we can adapt to what is changing. How do we stop people from being in the harm's way of a landslide? Now that is where governments, individual governments come in to say, we do know, like for example in Uganda, usually when there is extreme weather, when there is flooding in Kasese, Bududa, people are always, we always lose property and people die from that. How do we make sure that that doesn't happen? That is going to be individually as a country to make sure that we have plans of evacuation, we have rehabilitation processes. All that is how we can keep up with the changing climate. Otherwise, most of the reports that are coming right now globally are still indicating a lot of rise in temperature compared to what was there before. So meaning that the curve might not go down, but we also need to actually step up our game in terms of how we now cope with the rising temperatures. If you look at that curve right there shown on the screen, you just see an increasing trend. So meaning that temperatures are actually going up. There is no slowing down. And right now we're looking at close to 1.2 degrees Celsius. That is for 2022 alone. So that can only tell you even 2023 will be much worse than that, according to the projection, which is why we need to get onto the action and save ourselves. That does it for now. We will be going in for Good Morning Uganda agenda that will come in right after this. Later than that, we'll also take you through sports, after which we'll be going for Good Morning Uganda Extra. My name is Mollen Kenyena. I want to wish you a wonderful day.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial star 165 star 5 star 3 hash to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
It's the encounters with our majestic gorillas. The thrill of taking on the falls of the Nile River. The joy of discovering new traditions and a lot more. Join us at the 2023 Pearl of Africa Tourism Expo from the 26th to the 29th of April at the Commonwealth Resort, Nyonyintono. Rediscover our country's uniqueness and see what the tourism sector has in store for you. Visit www.poate.co.ug to secure your spot and get set to learn, network and explore. The Pearl of Africa Tourism Expo is brought to you by the Uganda Tourism Board in partnership with Competitiveness and Enterprise Development Projects. Explore Uganda, the Pearl of Africa.
The Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, under the auspices of the East African Community, will host the 10th East African Petroleum Conference and Exhibition 2023 from the 9th to the 11th of May 2023 at the Kampala Serena Hotel in Uganda. Take full advantage of the investment opportunities in the East African region's vibrant oil and gas sector. To find out more on how to sponsor, exhibit, or attend the 10th EAPCE 23, visit www.eapce23.eac.int.
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Jingati drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
Live from Nile Avenue in UBC Studios. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning and thank you so much for being with us on UBC TV. I must say it is a new week and of course we are blessed with the gift of life, the rainfall and maybe later on the sunshine. But in case you've been following the weather lady, that is Mollen Kenyena, you're now well versed with what is going to be happening in your area. Is it going to be sunny? Is it going to be a wet day throughout? Well, that's the reason why you should always wake up with us here on Good Morning Uganda from 6:30 because we give you a full packed meal of relevant information, some light jokes, and I can guarantee you start your day very, very informed because you made the wise choice. So make it a date with us every weekday, Monday to Friday. We are here to kickstart your mornings. I'm Robert Kirabo Nyonyintono. Welcome to Good Morning Uganda Agenda. Now this morning I'm going to be handling an issue of national concern that is in the area of education. And we all know education is a right. However, it has a price tag attached. Now what happens when people fail to access that right because they don't have the money as well? Government of Uganda in 2017 established what we call the Higher Students Loan Scheme. Now this was to help students pursuing higher education, that is diploma and degrees, to finance partially their expenditure. Now from then till date, we've seen about 13,405 students benefit from this loan. Joining me on set is the man himself, the Executive Director of the Higher Education Students Financing Board, Mr. Wanyama or Michael. You're most welcome to our studios this morning.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Kirabo, and good morning, viewers. I'm glad to be here this morning. Thank you for inviting me. Yes.
Now, I can't forget to remind our viewers that the number coming on your screen, you can send me as many messages in relation to the topic of discussion. That is 0709 60 25 92. We want to know more about the students' loan. Feel free to send me a text message or a WhatsApp message on that number. Now, to begin with, when we talk about the higher students loan scheme, one would say it sounds obvious.
Yes.
But what is your mandate since the establishment by an act of parliament in 2014?
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Kirabo. And once again, I want to welcome all our viewers. This scheme was established by an act of parliament in 2014, number 2, largely to assist learners to get loans or scholarships to pursue higher education. The intentions of the government by then, which I have to thank so much His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, while campaigning in 2011, promised Ugandans, having realized that there were a number of interventions that had been introduced in this country. He did talk about UPE, which had really led so many learners to access primary education. We also had universal secondary education, and the numbers kept on growing. So the idea now was, how then did we assist the learners who have gone through the lower level, basic level, secondary level, to complete the cycle of education. So he promised, having realized that many learners were not able to attain higher education because they were failing to raise fees. So he promised that during my next term, I'm going to provide money to learners to be able to study at higher learning institutions. So in 2014, as I did say, the law was established, majorly with an objective to ensure that we increase access to higher education in higher learning institutions. 2, also to support those programs that were very critical to national development, because I'll be explaining that at the end of the day, we don't fund all programs, but we look at in line with the National Development Plan, now 3. Of course, we started with the 2. In line with the NRM manifesto, in line with the Vision 2040, we look at those programs that have been analyzed and found it to be very critical to spur economic, socio-economic development in the country. The other thing was also to ensure that we balance on regional basis, that all areas should benefit from this scheme. And also to ensure that at the end of the day, we create what we call a revolving fund. Because this is a loan that when we give you the money, we expect you at the end of the period, the study period, which I'll be explaining, to pay back so that we use the same resources to increase access to higher education. So largely that was the objective, that let's support these learners who have completed maybe senior 6 or certificate and they want to get a diploma to be able to pursue higher education. So we do support them with money to enable them pay fees. And if you allow me, I could also dwell into that. When we give you a loan, this loan is to enable you be able to pay tuition fees, functional fees, research fees, and if you're a person with disability, then we also give you money to fund you with what we call assistive devices. This is, in other words, sometimes we call it aids and appliances. Assuming you're not able to, you're blind, we give you money to buy a braille. You need a wheelchair, we give you money. So we fund what we call direct cost to education, money to enable you be in class. These are the expenses related to your normal daily
the meals, the transport, the accommodation.
That's meant by the learner himself or herself or the parent. And the idea to that was also to ensure that the loan is not so big to the extent that the borrower may fail to repay it. So we said, let this initiative be a cost-sharing initiative.
So let me just hop in there. So do you have a ceiling of how much you can give per student?
Oh, yes.
How do you arrive at that?
Oh, yes. Like I've said, we pay you to enable you be in class, meaning we pay tuition fees, functional fees, research fees, and we fund various courses. And each course has a unit cost. So for purposes of funding, we have done the calculation, and we have what we call a unit cost. So at our level, we know that if we have 4,500,000, it will enable any learner be in class. But remember, these courses range from about 2.5 million per annum to about 8 million per annum. So our capping right now, that the maximum amount we can give you is 7.2 million, and that is for medicine and surgery in some private universities.
That is per semester
No,
or
per annum,
annually?
per annum.
Okay.
So when we get money from Ministry of Finance for budgeting purposes, the unit cost we use is 4.5 million. For instance, if I say this year I'm going to fund 1,000 learners, I'll be requesting for 4.5 billion. You get it? Now, when I have this money, I'm able to pay fees for a learner who is doing, say, Bachelor of Science Education at Gulu at 2.8 per annum. I'm also able to pay for a learner who is doing Bachelor of Medicine and Surgery at KIU at 7-point-something million. You get it? So the capping right now has been put at 7.2. At one time it was 6.4. So we keep on increasing depending on how much the higher learning institutions are charging.
Now, that said, I go back to our parents. I know many parents, many children struggle with higher education. Recently, I saw the administrators of Makerere University appearing before a committee of parliament, and one of the concerns there was the high dropout rate, where they said annually at Makerere University, the main public university, we lose 1,000 students because they fail to complete fees tuition. Then at, that is Gulu University, it was estimated at about 2,000. Come to MUBS, that was about 15% of the students. Well, there could be other reasons that also contribute to this, but that is what was outlined by those that appeared before the committee. Now, I know parents watching us, everybody's excited that yes, there is a loan scheme where government can help students get their diplomas, get their degrees. But this brings me to another question. Let's look at who qualifies, because every year thousands sit for their senior 6 exams, and a number of these are children who are coming from less privileged or they're vulnerable in terms of finances. So how do you come to who benefits?
Thank you, and I will use this opportunity really to explain that matter. One, that to qualify for a student loan scheme, you must be a Ugandan. 2, that you must be admitted at a higher learning institution doing an accredited program. 3 is that you must demonstrate that you have a financial need, and I'm going to explain that in detail. 4, that you must be admitted either in a public university or a private chartered university. And here, those listening to us have to be very careful because we have about 40 private higher learning universities. But currently, it's only about 12 universities that are chartered. So you must be admitted in a public university, which many of them know. We are talking about Makerere, Kyambogo, that's Mbarara University of Science and Technology. We are talking about Husitema, Gulu, Muni. We are talking about, recently, of course, there's also Mountains of the Moon. Is one of the universities that is now a public university. And then when you go to private, there are quite a number. We are talking about Uganda Christian University, Uganda Matters University, Nkumba, Bugema, KIU, then also Kampala University. We even have Bishop Stewart University, among others. So they
those are all chartered. Those
are all chartered. So the essence of
because that is where the trouble comes from.
Yes.
Private universities.
Private universities. Any private university is first licensed. It's given a license. And it's given a number of years to meet quality parameters that whatever is required to be called a true university is in place. So the National Council for Higher Education keeps on checking on those quality parameters, whether they're in place. And at some point T, they are given a charter. And that charter is assented to by His Excellency, the President of Uganda. So the moment now you have a charter, we then start dealing with you. That the courses we are offering, we can also be able to fund students to do them. And actually, we have quite a number of learners in these private universities. So now, what I said is that also you must demonstrate that you have a financial need. And I'm happy to say that since we started this scheme, to date, we have given loans to a total of 13,405. And we are talking about learners who do not have had a chance to attain higher education. These are people who have been back at home. So the government of Uganda has taken good strides in ensuring that we increase access to higher education. We support those learners whose parents don't have money to pay for them. Remember, many of them, as I said early on, have been supported through universal primary education, universal secondary education, and UPLET interventions by government. Now, the beauty is that the population knows about this scheme. And year in, year out, we receive quite a number of learners who are applying. I will also demonstrate to you that on a yearly basis, we only take about 30% of the applicants on this scheme.
30%?
30%. The demand is quite high. The demand is quite high.
It must be.
Yeah, on average, you will receive about 6,000 applicants. And on average, you will take about 1,200. Sometimes the number has risen up to 1,500. Now, out of those who have applied, in our own research, we have also established that 85% of those applicants deserve to get this money. But then, because of sometimes the limitation on the funding, we now have to sort out the most vulnerable among those who have applied. I could say the poorest among those who have applied.
Now, how do you arrive at that?
Yes,
because
and I'm explaining that. I'm explaining that.
The public concern, because most of these schemes, ED, we find that they have had challenges, where most of the times have come out to say they are meant for the poor, then they benefit the rich. So my concern is, how do you arrive at knowing that so and so X, W, Y are from the poorest among the poor, and they really need this?
I'll tell you that for us, the challenge has not been that maybe we pick out those who are able to pay for themselves. Our challenge has just been that the poor are quite many. So we pick the poorest among the poor, implying that we even leave out those who cannot afford it, simply because we don't have the money. But I'm going to explain how we do this. Of course, I'm not cheating exams for people. Now, for you to get a loan, you must apply. And that application form we give you is so detailed. It asks for a number of parameters. It has a number of parameters that you must give us sufficient information we use to find out that you are needed. Now, in Uganda, I would say we don't have a database where we can say a son of Mr. Kirabo is either rich or a son of Mr. Onyama is either poor. So we look at what we call, what are those common things with relatively poor people. And we have done research on that, and we have identified these issues. So we have about 15 parameters in our scorecard that we have evaluated and graded them. And they realized that this one has a more wide, stronger correlation to poverty, while this one has less correlation to poverty. So we call these proxy variables. So we do what we call a means test. A means test is like, we use these proxy variables to find out your ability or inability to finance higher education. Now, among those proxy variables, I'll explain. We look at one is even the gender bit of it. The girl child has more percentage over the boy child. The issue of orphanage. If you have lost both parents or single parent, you have lost one, which schools have you attended? I'll tell you, for instance, you have been in the UPA, USE, as compared to this first class world schools, Wudo. The one of UPE gets more marks than you. The parents' education background, what level of education, me and you have maybe masters and above, as compared to our cousin who doesn't have. But all this has points. The parents' socioeconomic status, what does he do? We look at even the social amenities at home. What kind of health services do you use? Do you go to a health center, or you have insurance and that kind of thing? So all this, we weight them against 100%. And each of it has a certain percentage. For instance, if you are an orphan, you can imagine that gives you a lot of advantage as compared to someone who is not an orphan. We don't look at, look here, this kid assuming was being sponsored by Mr. Kirabo, and he was not in Wudo. It doesn't deny him. Kirabo was just helping. Kirabo is, we attach an applicant to the parent. You get it? This applicant could be a brother of Kirabo. He's not his son, but his parents died. So being in Wudo does not deny him a student loan. So those are some of the parameters we use. And at the end of the day, we have embedded this scorecard in our integrated, in our ICT framework. We call it, it's a scorecard we use, which is ICT based. And at the end of the day, it helps us to sort out. Actually, it marks like you have given the learners a test. Someone has 70, someone has 50 or 60. So it helps us to sort out the poorest among those who have applied.
Well, you're still watching UBC TV, and we are looking at the Higher Students Loan Scheme. I have the Executive Director, and we are looking at who qualifies, and of course, has this really caused the transformation or the assistance that His Excellency, when he thought and pledged and promised Ugandans that, yes, I'll do this, has it delivered? Now, we've looked at who qualifies. Let's look at which specific courses. I remember most often this scheme has been seen as for students who did sciences. And one person told me, well, it must be in direction that the course you want to pursue is in line with the National Development Plan 2, then 3. It must be with the vision. And I'm like, so where does it leave those with arts? What are those specific courses or disciplines or bachelors that you look to funding?
When His Excellency was setting up this scheme, he was very clear. He said, one, I want the money that we are going to dish out to support learners who are doing programs that are very critical to national development. Two, we also mandated it to find out in areas that are really very necessary to cause socio-economic transformation, but where there's a shortage of human resource. You get it? So, and as I said, we work in line with the Vision 2040. We work in line with actually Africa Agenda 2063. Back at home, we work in line with also the National Development Plan. So we realized that there are certainly critical programs where we still have a shortage of human resources. But also at the same time, these are programs that enable learners to acquire relevant skills that when they come out, they don't take longer time to be fixed or to be able to use the skills that they have acquired to do something for themselves. So we started largely with the sciences. And we are talking about programs in the medicine and surgery. We are talking about programs in the pharmacy and the pharmaceutical science. We are talking about programs in agriculture. We are talking about programs in engineering, surveying. We now also have Bachelor of Statistics and Economics. But over time, we are opening up space slowly. For instance, 4 years back, we allowed the persons with disability to do any program, whether it is a science or humanity, because of the difficulties they go through in terms of doing sciences. You know, if someone is blind, it may be very difficult to do chemistry, to do human medicine, for obvious reasons. So those ones we have allowed them. And I want to tell our viewers that to date we have funded 94 learners with disabilities. A majority of them actually are doing humanity programs. You get it? Now, of recent also the board approved a program to do with any program that falls under hotel and tourism industry because of the need to train our own to manage the tourism sector. Of recent, you could have had a lot of talk and invitation to tourists to come to this country. And many times the people have also alleged that many people in that sector, we get them from other countries in East Africa and outside. But we are able to train our own because most of these universities have a tourism and the hotel industry courses. So we also sponsoring students. And the students who access those courses, yes, you can, maybe you could have done a science, but majority should have done arts courses at Uganda Advanced Certificate of Education. So we're opening up space. Then because we are supporting so much persons with disability, there are programs that target those people. I've seen many of them at Chambogo. For instance, Bachelor of Education with Special Needs, Bachelor of Teacher Education with Special Needs, Bachelor of Language, and something therapy. So all these programs, if you could have done an arts combination at A level and you're interested in doing them, we are supporting them. So the issue is that majority of the learners indeed we support are doing sciences. As I've explained, one, the skills that they get enable them to open up something for themselves without necessarily running to UBC saying, I'm looking for a job. And we have realized that actually, if we do much investment in Tibet, You could, everywhere we are now, we talk about TVET courses, because we know this TVET, by the time a learner qualifies, he has the skills, hands-on skills.
To start there.
Hands-on skills, and that's what
now, that brings me to how do you give this money? Because we are having a crafty generation.
Yes.
One would say, well, let me go for this money, get it. I could branch off and invest in certain things else. So how do you, is it by wiring to the student's account? Because it's also vital for our viewer.
Yes, I must say that we worked out a very good model that we are using, and that's why, the truth be said, there are less complaints about this scheme. And that's why I've been able to be at it Salem for the last 9 years with the very minimum complaints, just because of the systems we have put in place. Now, in terms of remitting funds, like I said, we fund students with the direct cost, money that enables them to be in class. So we disburse this money directly to the higher learning institution. We don't give this money to the learner. I'll amuse you that the very first year when we started, many learners thought that we would give them this money. And when they realized that we were remitting it to the university or other tertiary institutions, many of them actually, not many, but a few withdrew from the scheme. The other thing maybe we need to mention to those who are listening to us, we said we offer loans to those doing, for now, those doing degrees and diplomas. I don't want to miss out that part of diploma. It's very key, because listeners may think we only have money for those doing degrees. We also offer loans to STEM courses. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics for diploma. Talk about all those colleges that are examined by Uganda Business Technical Examination College, like we have, you remember Uganda Technical College, Elgon, Kigumba, Kichwamba, Chema, and all those in agriculture, all those in health sciences. We have offered a number of loans to those doing nursing, midwifery, pharmaceutical diploma, lab technology, surveying, agriculture, any program that we handle at degree, we equally handle it at diploma level. So those programs that I mentioned at degree level are equally financed under diploma level. So learners, if you miss out on degree, then you are able to apply for diploma.
Now, this is a loan scheme.
Yes.
In Uganda, we know our unemployment levels are quite high. Many people are qualified, first-class degree, but then it takes them 5 years, 6 years to get meaningful employment, or even employment, and they're supposed to pay back. You rightly mentioned that this is a revolving fund. Some supposed to pay back so that someone else benefits from this. Now, how are you handling the issue of paying back? I graduate this year, then I'm doing sociology, which is another diploma or degree for the next 5 years, yet I'm supposed to pay back this money for someone to benefit.
The beauty is that the law provides for very soft arrangements in terms of repaying back this money. One thing I want to explain is that the courses we offer range from 2 years to 5. 2 years if you are doing a diploma, 5 if you are doing medicine. Now, the repayment period is double the period that you have been at the college, or double the period for the course. Well, so it ranges between 5 years to 11, including a grace period of 1 year. So when you do a course, say, for 3 years, I want to use Bachelor of Science Education as an example to explain to our viewers. When you do Bachelor of Science for Education 3 years, the law provides for a grace period of 1 year. Grace period implying that we also realize you have just completed, you need to settle down. Even if you have gotten a job, you need to fix a few things here and there, rent a house, start life, and that kind of thing. But I'll be explaining something, a window that's working out very well, which we call early repayment, after I've explained this. Now, we give you a grace period of 1 year, double the period, that is 6 years. So meaning that you will have 7 years. Now, you can see, in terms of financial language, this is a longer term loan. 7 years to pay back an amount equivalent to 9 years. Actually, on average, you are only required to pay 50 to 100,000 every month if you have religiously been paying. So it's very flexible. that we allow you to earn and be able also to meet other incidental costs, while at the same time ably and easily servicing the student loan scheme. If you have done medicine, we give you 11 years. Now, the other thing we have found out working, the law allowed it, is what we call a repayment. Mr. Kirabo, you could be helping a learner to study, but at the end of the day, when that learner gets a loan, you are willing to remit in some little money as the learner is studying. Or even when the learner has completed, you come and say, I've gotten some money I want to pay. So that one, we call it early repayment, that you can pay part of your loan or all of it during the grace period. And I want to say that because we started the recovery about 2 years back, but about 40 learners have paid back their entire loan during the early repayment window. Because
haven't you had cases of disappearance? And then if that happens, how do you follow that up?
I want to say that, yes, we, in our assessment, because for us, we use a lot of statistics, 40% of those whose loans are due are making some payment. You get it? So we are still struggling with the other 60%. But 40%. So what we have done also is to engage the partners who are supposed to help us in this collection of the money lent out. We are explaining to them. One of the entities that has been very handy and very useful to us is the Federation of the Uganda Employers, because these people are going to get employed out there. And when they get employed, the law provides that on employment of any loan beneficiary, you must provide us with the necessary information. We give you the amount due. We give you the amount that is supposed to be deducted on a monthly basis so that you can start deducting. And we want to thank, I want to use this opportunity to thank the fraternity of you, Federation of Uganda Employers. The Minister of Public Service, we have also had a discussion with them, and they are willing to start helping us. We have discussed with the National Social Security Fund. We're discussing with the Uganda Revenue Authority. All these entities that have huge database, where we can even get information, because we are working out saying,
your employer begins remitting to NSSF, definitely. If there is a read something there, you get to know about it.
But we also encouraging learners, saying that the amount due to be repaid on a monthly basis is small amount, because the law has put a cap on us that we should not recover more than 30% of one's net income, implying that we leave you with the other 70%. So we want to encourage them, and we want to thank especially the learners who are paying without any hesitation, without any challenge. And we are talking to them saying, look here, reflect on where you were before we gave you this money. Given that we enable you to be in class and you have completed, start paying so that another Ugandan can also benefit from this money. Now, we are putting more emphasis on recovery, because out there we now have 46 billion due for recovery between 3 years and 11 years. And we are targeting that this year we should recover about 1.2 billion. In the next 3 years, we should have hit a mark of 3.3 billion. We envisage that in the next 10 years, this loan board should be self-sustaining without running back to government saying we want money. But as of now, we still beg government to give us money.
Now, running back to government, this brings me to something that hit the waves and shocked a number of hopeful Ugandans. One, that was a story that 1,000 students are to be discontinued or miss out on the student's loan. This shook a number, those currently, because the story in one of our dailies was indicating that there is no money for about 1,000 students already on this loan, and also implicating that then the next quarter you won't be able to get any students. Let's end with that, and then we'll look at some of the messages coming in.
Mr. Kirabo, I want to really thank you for inviting me to put a lot of clarification on this matter. Of course, there has been a lot of misinformation in the media. I want to start by giving a bit of figures. Right now, we have a total of 4,168 ongoing learners on the scheme. And we entered into a memorandum of understanding with them to fund them until they complete the education cycle. That when we give you a loan as a first year and you're doing a 3-year course, we fund you until you complete. When we give you a loan and you're doing medicine and surgery, we fund you until you complete. So I want to give an absolute assurance to the learners at the universities that the government will continue funding them until they complete. But I also want to pick it from, I think, the ongoing discussions that have been before the Parliamentary Committee on Education and Sports, and even at the full parliamentary level. Recently, the Minister of Education and Sports presented their ministerial policy statement with the indicative budget figures. And I want to say these are budget estimates. These are not final figures. And these budgetary estimates are based on what we call information received from Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. When you start budgeting, there is information that comes through in what we call a BCC, budget call circular, first, second, up to third. And this is the information provided by the Minister of Finance, together with his technical team, the PSST, informing the sectors that going forward, this is the money that you are going to receive. But this money is picked from what we call a medium-term expenditure framework, where we have been assured that we are going to have money. But along the way, they did inform the ministry that all subventions, because we are not yet a vote, that they are going to suffer from a cut of 80%. Then later, they had adjusted those figures. So the amount that they were presenting to Parliament, that is the amount due to us going forward, is 10 billion instead of 34.4 billion. Now, when this matter came to the attention of the members of Parliament on Education Committee and Sports, it was fully discussed and ably discussed, and the ministry, the message they gave out was that they are still discussing with the Minister of Finance to ensure that the Kenyena state are budget. This matter came up on the floor of Parliament, of course through a report presented by the Chairman of Education and Sports Committee. I watched it very well, and in the response, the Minister of Finance, a state minister in the Minister of Finance, Honorable Henry Musasi, clarified and said this seems to be a mistake that was created and is going to be addressed through a corrigenda. In the language for us financial people, a corrigenda is where right now Minister of Finance is trying to fix where errors were made to ensure that figures are restored. So I want to assure the viewers that we are going concern. This scheme is still on, and at an appropriate time we shall definitely inform the public of the final outcome. But what I want to inform the viewers is that before you get a loan, you must have gotten an admission form. Right now, universities and other tertiary institutions have advertised for learners to apply. Go ahead and apply, and for us, according to our roadmap, within May or June, when we receive the final figure from finance, we shall definitely come back here and say, this year now, we are going to take on this number. Because in our budget, we had decided we want to take on 1,500 new learners this year. And we had asked for an extra resource of 6.55 billion. And based on the assurance that the Honourable Minister of State for Finance gave to the entire Parliament that this is going to be sorted out, we are hopeful that we shall remain a going concern.
Well, let me use the remaining minutes to look at some of the messages that have come in. I will go through a few because some are more or less similar. Good morning, UBC. This is Dr. Brian from Molago Hospital. I can confirm that this was the only government opportunity that made me who I am today. So students should continue applying for the loan to make their dreams come true. I'm a true witness of this program. Then the loan scheme is for the rich. I think that you clarified. Then who qualifies for the students' loan scheme? That is something we also handled. Good morning, I am Agunyo Jerry from Arua. I am a student at UMCAT doing journalism and mass communication. I'd like to know more about the students' loan scheme. Well, if you're following, you've known quite much. Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for the program. Now, do you give the loan to students who drop out of our institutions? I think that's something. For instance, the one who dropped out from year 2 and was in semester 2 doing bachelor's degree in education due to financial problems. Then, good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for the program. Now, do you give the loan to students Okay, still similar. Barbara from Kitgum, I'm a student interested to go for this loan. Basically, how do I get this loan is the biggest question. Okay. Edie, we are left with about 2 to 3 minutes. Let me have your concluding remarks in relation to some of the question that has come in, where one says, hi, doesn't the scheme favor the law students as well? Does Macquarie University admit diploma in medical laboratory? Where does one access the application forms for them to be able to apply?
That's very important. 2 years back, we now apply online because we realize most of these universities, to access their admission, you must apply online. So the issue of saying, it's not possible to apply online doesn't work very well, because we have now fully gone automated, and the learners are able to, and it helps us to reduce on many mistakes when you are filling a hard copy. So you can access our application form on our website. Sometimes even if I read it now, you may not get it, but just go on Google and put in Student Loan Scheme Uganda. The website will come. On the website, you'll see an application window. It's a step-by-step process, very easy. Then you apply. Even if you go on it now, you will not access the application window because we are waiting for the universities to admit. I explained that. Maybe one could have joined us late. Then the other question was on UMCAT. I did say we support learners in both public and private chartered universities. Then when it comes to these other higher learning institutions teaching diplomas, right now we are still dealing with only government institutions. But the body is discussing, we may open up space very soon so that we look at also some private institutions that offer diploma. And I'll come back here and explain. The issue of law, I said we basically look at sciences. I did mention a few humanitarian programs that we look at. Law is not one of them. Yes, one was asking about the continuing student. 3 years back, we received some money and supported the continuing student. And we are hoping that as we increase on our recovery efforts and start realizing some money, indeed it's a major problem. Learners who are in the second year, who are in the final year, someone is in the third year, is in the fourth year, very, very final year, the parents have been struggling. You really feel it that this learner must be supported. One has only a few years to complete. Now, the other thing as we conclude is my message to the learners we supported and who are out there with our money. I want to appeal to you kindly. We are following you up. Some of you already have jobs. I'll give you an interesting case. When we were following some two learners, we realized they have even received the loans from commercial banks and they are not paying us. Indeed, the message we gave you when you had just joined the scheme, the goodness in you that you appeared to be, that you are going to cooperate so that this little money should be repaid so that other learners can also access. It's the message I want to give to people who have borrowed. Be kind enough, be faithful, be godly. Let's support other learners who need this money, and there are quite many. So like I said, already out there we have 46 billion. And if we can recover quite a substantial amount of this, we shall not run back to government. So let them support us so that we can support other Ugandans to access education in this country.
Well, thank you so much. Wanyama Michael, who happens to be the Executive Director of the Higher Education Students Financing Board. We've been discussing the Students' Loan Scheme, and of course, I know you're now more aware. Well, just go to that website, get all the information you need, but I feel we should be very human. You were once at that place between a rock and a hard stone. Now, government of Uganda had a solution for you. Pay back that money for another student in the same situation you are in to benefit. See you in the next hour. The sportsman is ready to give us more of what happened. You know, these days in soccer, some teams score a netball or basketball goals, but he will be here to give you more of that. See you later on. Have a lovely time.